Welcome to the deep dive. We are really excited to have you with us today because we're getting into something that, well, it affects almost everyone.
Yeah, absolutely.
So usually when we talk about a medical diagnosis, there's this expectation of, like, clinical precision, right? You break your arm, the x-ray shows that jagged white line, and the doctor just points and says, yep, there it is. That's the problem.
It's completely binary. Like, it's broken or it's not broken. You see the evidence right there.
Right. But then you step into the world of mental health and specifically that incredibly heavy decision to actually start getting help. And suddenly that x-ray machine is useless.
Yeah, you can't photograph the exact moment a coping mechanism stops working.
Exactly. We're looking at a diagnostic landscape that is entirely invisible, which is why, okay, let's unpack this. Our mission today is to explore the anatomy of that exact threshold.
The breaking point.
Right. We're looking at what actually stops you from getting help, both internally and externally, and, how modern healthcare models are trying to dismantle those barriers.
And we've got a really great stack of sources for this today.
We do. First, we're pulling from this really poignant psychological essay titled Permission to Start Therapy at Any Age. And then we're pairing that kind of philosophical framework with a real-world case study.
Right. The operational blueprints of a Georgia-based telehealth therapy practice.
Yeah, it's called Coping and Healing Counseling, or
wow.
CHC.
What's really fascinating here is how these two sources basically tackle the same problem, but from completely opposite ends.
How so?
Well, the essay attacks the psychological stigma, like this outdated, internalized notion that therapy is a desperate last resort for people who are, quote unquote, broken. It completely reframes seeking help as a proactive, really brave choice. And then the CHC case study shows us what happens when a medical practice aligns its entire business model to support that exact realization.
It's so cool. But before we look at the structural mechanics of how modern therapy gets delivered, we have to talk about the friction of starting.
Oh, the delay, the infamous delay.
Right. Because almost nobody wakes up on a Tuesday with a little anxiety and just, schedules a session for Wednesday.
No, people wait years, sometimes literally decades.
Yeah, and the essay focuses heavily on this delay. It isolates a very specific emotional roadblock that forms while you're waiting. They call it the grief of waiting.
The grief of waiting. It's such a powerful phrase.
It really is. It's this unique flavor of guilt, I guess, where you finally realize you need help, but instead of just moving forward, you start agonizing over the fact that you didn't do it sooner.
Right.
Like, it reminds me of that old proverb about planting a tree. You know the one.
The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago.
Exactly. The best time was years ago, but the second best time is today. But when it comes to mental health, we just get stuck on that 20 years ago part. You look back at a decade of struggling in your career and you think, man, I should have done this sooner. How does that guilt act as a barrier?
It's a massive emotional roadblock. It's a brutal form of self-sabotage, honestly, because psychologically you are judging your past behavior using the knowledge you only acquired because of that past behavior.
Oh, wow. That's a really good point.
Yeah, you're essentially demanding that a past version of yourself should have had the emotional tools that you only possess today.
Which is completely unfair.
Totally unfair. And the essay explicitly calls out how paralyzing this is. It notes that entering therapy in your 30s or 40s, 50s, even 60s, it triggers this exact shame spiral.
Which paradoxically just makes people delay even further.
Exactly. But the text provides a really vital reframing here. It explicitly states that it is never too late. The earlier version of you was simply doing the best they could with the tools they had.
They were just surviving.
Right. Seeking help now isn't a failure of your past self, it's growth for your current self.
I love how the source frames this. It argues that therapy isn't a punishment for waiting too long. It's actually a gift you give your future self.
A gift to your future self.
Yeah. You're supposed to imagine whoever you will be 1 year from today and realize that version of you is gently asking you to make the call.
It's like temporal stewardship. You're taking responsibility for someone you haven't even met yet.
But okay, here's where it gets really interesting to me. The essay frames this all as a matter of bravery. But if we're being completely honest about human nature, isn't it just easier to keep carrying the weight rather than unpack it?
I mean, avoidance is highly efficient, sure.
Right. If you spent 20 years building emotional walls, those walls work. They keep you safe. Dismantling them sounds terrifying. Avoidance gets you through a Tuesday perfectly fine.
It gets you through a Tuesday, yes. But it is catastrophic for surviving a decade.
Mm.
The cumulative toll of carrying that unprocessed stuff, it doesn't just stay mental. But to your point about the terror of dismantling those walls,
Yeah.
the text offers a counter-argument. It says that therapy isn't for people who want to tear themselves apart. It's for those who decided that whatever burden they're carrying, they simply do not have to carry it alone anymore.
You don't have to carry it along.
Yeah.
Wow, that really shifts the focus entirely.
Right. It's sharing the load. It's realizing that trying to brute force your way through psychological distress is just, well, it's an incredibly inefficient way to live.
Which perfectly transitions us to the external barrier. Because once you overcome that internal grief of waiting,
Which is huge.
huge, but once you do that and you decide to be brave, the immediate next hurdle is purely practical.
Oh, the logistics.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You ask yourself, how do I find a therapist? Is it expensive? Do I have to commute?
The external barrier in the healthcare system is formidable enough to crush any internal momentum you just built up.
It really is. And this brings us right to the logistical solutions provided by Coping and Healing Counseling, or CHC. Let's lay out the specific facts from the source about them.
Let's do it.
So they are a 100% HIPAA-compliant telehealth practice. Oh. And they serve every single one of Georgia's 159 counties.
Every single one. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that geographic aspect is vital.
Because usually we just talk about cost, right?
Exactly. We talk about mental health access as a financial issue, but historically, it's just as much a geographic crisis. If you look at rural areas, you often have vast stretches of land without a single licensed therapist.
So you'd have to drive like 2 hours just for an appointment.
Right. The traditional brick-and-mortar model inherently privileges urban centers. By deploying a 100% telehealth model, CHC essentially erases that map. You can do this from anywhere in the state.
And doing it from anywhere on a high PA-compliant platform means the privacy anxiety is solved instantly. You don't have to worry about bumping into your neighbor in a waiting room.
Exactly. It lowers the barrier to entry. But a frictionless platform doesn't mean much if the actual care isn't comprehensive.
Right, which is why the source highlights their roster. They have 15-plus licensed therapists.
And a wide variety of specialties, too.
Yeah, they have licensed clinical social workers, licensed professional counselors, and licensed marriage and family therapists.
Having that specific variety of licenses under one digital roof is a very deliberate strategy.
And the scope of care is massive. Individual, couples, family, and teen therapy for ages 13 and up. Plus life coaching. They specialize in heavy-hitting issues, too.
Like anxiety, depression, trauma, PTSD, grief.
Stress, relationships, all of it. But I think what's really notable is the text mentions they are a diverse and culturally competent team. Why is that so significant?
Because it removes the friction of finding a quote-unquote good fit. Research consistently shows that the strongest predictor of success in therapy isn't the specific modality.
Wait, really? It's not the technique.
No, it's the quality of the bond between the client and the therapist. If a client has to spend the first 4 sessions explaining their cultural background.
Oh, I see. That's exhausting.
Exactly. The friction is just too high. A diverse team means a patient can easily find a provider who intrinsically understands their lived experience.
That makes total sense. Okay, but I'm going to play the role of the skeptical listener here.
Go for it.
We hear diverse specialists, HIPAA-compliant platforms, comprehensive trauma care. So what does this all mean for my wallet? Because usually, convenience like this costs a fortune.
Cost is the ultimate gatekeeper, right? You can have the best geographic reach in the world, but if it costs $300 a session, you've just built a very accessible locked door.
Exactly. So what are the insurance details from the text?
This is where CHC really shines. First off, Medicaid is accepted.
Wow.
And not just accepted, it's accepted with a $0 copay.
Wait, $0. Literally nothing.
$0. Which is a massive win for accessibility. Negotiating with state Medicaid systems is notoriously complex, so a lot of private practices just don't do it.
That's incredible. What about commercial insurance?
They accept major carriers: Aetna, Cigna, Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, and Humana.
Okay, that covers a lot of people.
Yeah, and with those plans, sessions typically cost between $10 and $40.
$10 to $40. That shifts therapy from being like a luxury expenditure to just the cost of a takeout dinner.
It fundamentally changes the math.
It really does. I should actually just drop the contact info right now for anyone in Georgia who might need this.
That's a great idea.
Okay, if you're listening and you're in Georgia, you can reach them at 404-832-0102 or online at cheattherapy.com, and their email is support@cheattherapy.com.
It's all about making that first step as easy as possible.
Exactly. So we've solved the internal guilt, and we've solved the external logistics. But we don't live in a vacuum.
No, we definitely don't.
How does our environment, specifically our workplace, affect our willingness to seek this help? The essay really shifts gears in the last section to talk about this.
Right. It stops talking to the individual and starts talking directly to leaders and managers.
Yeah. The text introduces this amazing analogy. It says the leader is the office thermostat.
A thermostat. I love that.
It's so accurate. The manager sets the temperature for what is acceptable. If the boss works through every weekend and never acknowledges burnout, the whole team freezes up.
Because employees are constantly monitoring leadership to figure out the unwritten rules, the most powerful thing a manager can do is normalize seeking support.
So what does that actually look like? Just sending out an email saying, "We value mental health."
No, it has to be active. It happens when leaders openly talk about their own therapy or, when they take a mental health day.
Right. Instead of just saying, "I'm feeling under the weather," they actually say, "I am taking a mental health day."
Exactly. That slight shift in vocabulary causes a measurable cultural shift.
The text mentions a domino effect here. Can you explain that?
Sure. So the first domino is vulnerability at the top. When leadership is vulnerable, the immediate result is that the stigma drops.
Because the boss just crossed the line first.
Right. And when stigma drops, the next domino falls. Help seeking rises. The employees who are carrying that grief of waiting suddenly feel permission to act.
They log on, they use platforms like CHC.
Exactly. And the final domino is what every business cares about. Productivity follows.
Oh, interesting. So it's a win for the bottom line, too.
Absolutely. When an employee is dealing with untreated anxiety, a massive percentage of their daily energy is spent just trying to look professional.
They're running a heavy background application.
Perfect way to put it. By utilizing therapy, they process that distress. They return to the office emotionally regulated, and suddenly they have full cognitive bandwidth again.
So it's a win for the individual and the organization. And the text specifically prompts leaders who have team members in Georgia to point them toward accessible options like CHC.
It moves leadership from just being passively sympathetic to actively facilitating help.
That is a huge shift. Okay, let's wrap this up for the listener.
Sounds good.
To summarize what we've unpacked today, the barriers to mental health care are falling on all fronts. Internally, we're learning to forgive our past selves. We're learning to be brave enough to share the load.
Right. Abandoning the grief of waiting.
Exactly. And externally, practices like coping and healing counseling are using telehealth and accessible insurance models to reach people in all 159 Georgia counties.
They've effectively eliminated the logistical excuses.
So it really just leaves us with permission to start.
This raises an important question, though.
Oh, that's that.
We've spent all this time dissecting the idea that therapy is a gift you give your future self.
Yeah.
So for the listener, consider this. If we accept that principle, what other gifts of maintenance are you currently withholding?
Oh, wow. Like physical or emotional maintenance.
Exactly. Setting a difficult boundary, addressing chronic physical pain, having a tough conversation to repair a relationship. What are you putting off because you feel like it's quote-unquote too late to start?
That is such a sharp thought, because the central lesson today is that the timeline is a myth.
Right. Are you starving your future self just to avoid the friction of today?
Yeah. Incredible. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive, listener. Keep questioning the systems you interact with. Keep unpacking the invisible barriers around you. And remember, your future self is always worth the investment. Take care.